500 years, it had ruled the known world. From the cold rivers of Britain to the burning sands of Egypt, Rome was the eternal city. The empire men believed could never fall, the master of every sea and every road, and yet it died, not in a single great battle, but slowly, betrayed and bled and broken from within. When the end finally came, the last emperor of the West was not a hero or a tyrant, but a frightened boy. He handed his crown to a barbarian king. And the empire that had conquered the world simply ceased to be. This is the story of the losing side. For centuries, Rome had been the greatest power the world had ever seen. Its legions were the most disciplined army on earth, marching beneath golden eagles to victory after victory. Its empire stretched across 3 continents, binding 100 peoples under one law and one road network. From Britain to the Euphrates, merchants traded in safety, and cities rose in marble along Roman roads. The emperor in Rome ruled more land and more lives than any single man before him. To the people of the empire, Rome was not just a city. It was the natural order of the whole world. They called it the eternal city, and they could not imagine a world in which it did not stand. For 200 years a great peace had held, and the borders seemed as solid as the mountains. But an empire this vast was a heavy thing to hold, and its strength was quietly failing. Beneath the marble and the gold, the foundations of Rome had begun to rot. In the 3rd century, the empire was struck by a storm of plague, famine, and endless civil war. Emperors rose and fell like leaves. In 50 years, dozens were murdered by their own soldiers. The armies that had once guarded the borders now turned inward to fight each other for the throne. Taxes crushed the people. The coins were debased into worthless metal, and trade withered on the dying roads. Whole provinces slipped from Roman control, and the frontier defenses began to crack. To save the empire, one emperor split it in 2, an eastern half and a western half, each with its own ruler. The richer, stronger East would endure for 1,000 years more, ruled from a new capital in the east. But the West, with its older cities and longer borders, was left poorer and far more exposed. And beyond those western borders, in the cold forests of the north, a great storm was gathering. All peoples were on the move, driven west by hunger and by a terror riding out of the east. For centuries the Romans had held the barbarian tribes beyond the Rhine and the Danube at bay. But now a savage new people, the Huns, came thundering out of the eastern steppe. They drove the Gothic tribes before them in panic, until the Goths begged Rome to let them cross the river to safety. The emperor allowed them in, hoping to turn these desperate refugees into Roman soldiers. Instead, his officials starved them, cheated them, and sold their children into slavery. Pushed beyond endurance, the Goths rose in fury and put the Roman countryside to fire and sword. The Eastern Emperor Valens marched out to crush them, certain of an easy Roman victory. On a hot August day, in the year 378, near a city called Adrianople, he found their army. He attacked without waiting for help, and the Gothic cavalry fell upon his legions and shattered them. 2/3 of the Eastern Roman army were cut down on that field in a single afternoon. The emperor himself vanished in the slaughter. his body never found among the dead. It was the worst defeat Rome had suffered in centuries, and the world had seen its weakness. From that day, barbarians were no longer kept out. They were inside, and they were here to stay. If you are moved by the fall of great powers, take 1 second to subscribe. Now, back to a dying Rome. Among the Goths rose a bold young king named Alaric, who had once fought in Roman service. He led his people through the Balkans and down into Italy itself, demanding land and gold from the empire. For a time the West was saved by a brilliant general named Stilicho, half barbarian, wholly loyal to Rome. But a jealous court whispered that Stilicho was a traitor, and the emperor had his greatest defender executed. With Stilicho dead, there was no one left who could stop Alaric, and the Goths marched on the capital. In the year 410, after 800 years, a foreign army stood once more before the gates of Rome. By night, the gates were opened, and the Visigoths poured into the Eternal City. For 3 days, they looted the temples, the palaces, and the homes of the proudest city on earth. Rome, the city that had sacked 1,000 others, was itself plundered and burned. Across the empire, men wept and asked how this could happen, as if the sky itself had fallen. The Eternal City had been proven mortal, and everyone in the world now knew it. After Rome was sacked, the West did not die all at once. It was carved apart piece by piece. Bands of Goths, Vandals, and Franks tore away the western provinces one by one, each carving out a kingdom. The Vandals crossed into Africa and seized the rich grain fields that had fed the city of Rome for centuries. Without African grain and African taxes, the Western Empire was slowly starved of its lifeblood. Then out of the east came the most feared man of the age, Attila, king of the Huns. He led his horsemen across the empire in a tide of fire, and men called him the Scourge of God. Only one Roman general dared to face him, a hard and cunning man named Aetius. On the plains of Gaul, Aetius gathered the last Roman legions and the very barbarians who had broken Rome. Together, Roman and Goth, they met Attila in a battle so terrible that legend says the rivers ran red. Aetius held the field and turned the Huns back, the last great victory the Western Empire would ever win. He was called the last of the Romans, the one man still holding the broken pieces together. And so the frightened emperor, jealous of his power, drew a sword and murdered Aetius with his own hand. Men said the emperor had cut off his own right hand with his left, and they were right. A few years later, the Vandals sailed up from Africa and sacked the defenseless city of Rome a second time. Now the Western Empire was little more than Italy itself, a hollow shell wearing the name of Rome. In its final years, the Western throne became a sad parade of puppet emperors who ruled nothing. The real power lay with the barbarian generals who commanded what was left of the army. These warlords raised up emperors and cast them down as it suited them, like men moving game pieces. The last of them was set on the throne by his father, a Roman officer named Orestes. Orestes crowned his own son, a boy not yet grown, and gave him a name heavy with history, for the child was called Romulus Augustulus, the name of Rome's first founder and its first emperor at once. But the boy emperor ruled nothing. His father held the power, and his father had made a deadly promise. Orestes had bought the loyalty of his barbarian soldiers by promising them a third of all Italy as their own. When the time came to pay, he broke his word, and the soldiers turned to a chieftain named Odoacer. Odoacer led them against Orestes, hunted him down, and put the father of the emperor to the sword. Then he marched on the boy who still wore the imperial purple in the palace at Ravenna. But Odoacer did not kill the child. He looked at the frightened boy and felt only pity. He stripped Romulus Augustulus of his crown and sent him away to live quietly on a country estate. And then Odoacer did something that ended an age. He sent the imperial regalia east to Constantinople. The West, he declared, no longer needed an emperor of its own, and the throne of the West stood forever empty. In the year 476, the Western Roman Empire, which had ruled the world for 5 centuries, quietly ceased to exist. There was no final battle, no last heroic stand. The greatest empire in history simply faded into the dark. It was not killed by a single enemy, but worn down by 1,000 wounds it could no longer heal. In the East, the Roman Empire lived on for another 1,000 years, until it last fell. But in the West, the cities crumbled, the roads broke, and the long centuries men would call the Dark Ages began. And yet the idea of Rome refused to die, haunting every king and emperor who came after. For 1,000 years men would claim its crown, its laws, and its name, dreaming of the empire that was lost. The eternal city had fallen, but its ghost would rule the imagination of the world far longer than its legions ever did. The greatest power the world had ever known had been brought low, not by a conqueror, but by its own slow death. This has been the story of the losing side.